She was trespassing.
Maria Falls said, one hand still on the grip of the gun, the other pointing down at my daughter like Celine was roadkill. And I gave her a clear verbal warning. Celine was curled on the wood planks of the pier, blood soaking into the sketch of an egret she'd drawn just 15 minutes earlier. Her left thigh pulsed red through her jeans. And Maria Falls, president of the Orleans Pines HOA board, stood over her with the same expression she wore when issuing parking fines. Bored and righteous. You discharged a weapon at a child, I said. You didn't warn her, you shot her. She didn't blink. I'm fully within my authority as security liaison under Article 14E. Defensive posture is permitted during patrol. That article doesn't exist, I said coldly. And the HOA isn't law enforcement. My fingers were already on my belt radio. Not to call backup, I didn't need it yet, but to record. Her face flinched when she saw the red blinking light. If you're reading this and you think HOA power stops at barking about grass height, hit subscribe now. You have no idea how far some of these people will go when they think the rulebook is theirs to rewrite. I'm Garrick Rayon, 12 years in police intelligence. I've testified in 2 federal corruption trials and helped bust $1 million weapons laundering ring using shell HOAs, just like this one. But this was my daughter. I moved here thinking it would be quiet, safe. After my wife died, Celine needed peace, and Orleans Pines looked like a postcard. It had trees, lakefront access, and a pier where she could paint alone. The last place in the neighborhood without a camera, a drone, or a gate code. That pier became her escape. She said it smelled like the wildlife preserve we used to visit as a family. She said it made her feel close to Mom. So I let her go there every Saturday, sketchbook in hand, earbuds in, shoes off. I never thought I'd find her there with a bullet in her leg and a woman in a HOA polo shirt aiming down her sights like she was on patrol in Fallujah. Maria didn't even kneel. She didn't check a pulse. She didn't touch her walkie. She just stood there and quoted made-up codes from an HOA manual she wrote herself. This is private property, she said again. Her presence was unauthorized. We've had issues with graffiti. She was drawing with chalk, I growled. And you've been warned about hostile conduct before, Mr. Rion. Right there, that line. That was the moment I knew she was building a paper trail, trying to lay groundwork for whatever damage she planned next, and trying to discredit me before I could take action. But she'd made a mistake, a big one, because I wasn't just some grieving father who moved in after a tragedy. I'd read every line of the original HOA charter before I signed. I'd flagged 6 discrepancies in the board's online filings, and I still had access to the state's regulatory enforcement portal. And more importantly, I knew the insurance clause, the one that banned weapons on common grounds, the one that voided coverage for any bodily injury related to firearms, patrols, or civilian enforcement unless approved by a municipal agency. That clause was going to bury her. I knelt beside Celine. Her face was pale, but she was awake. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear her over the ringing in my ears. I pressed down on her leg with both hands, whispering reassurances while Maria stood 3 feet away, holding a gun she wasn't allowed to carry, on land she didn't legally control. I heard a door slam across the water. Someone had seen. Maybe the old woman in 7B. Maybe Tomlin Barres, the treasurer who always looked like he was choking on guilt. I didn't care. All I needed was one witness, or one drone, or one crack in the lie she'd built her power on. Celine shivered. Her blood pooled under my knees, and Mireya just adjusted her HOA badge, holstered the weapon, and walked back down the dock like nothing had happened. That's when I knew. This wasn't about citations anymore. It was war. They taped off the pier like it was a minor construction zone. By the time paramedics loaded Celine into the ambulance, the HOA had already sent out a community-wide bulletin titled Incident at Common Area, Safety Protocol Reminder. It described the shooting as a low-caliber defensive discharge and reminded residents not to congregate in non-designated artistic spaces. There was no mention of my daughter's name. No mention that the trespasser was 13 years old. Just the word incident, softened until it barely sounded like violence. Maria Falls didn't even hide it. She stood under the shade of the welcome pavilion that bordered the pier entrance, nodding politely to residents who came to gawk at the taped-off boards. She was still in uniform, khakis, HOA windbreaker, and that smug little pin she'd added last month. Neighborhood Stabilization Patrol. She caught my eye as I walked past and raised her coffee cup like it was a casual wave. I didn't acknowledge her. I headed straight for the community hall. The board had called an emergency session, not to investigate the shooting. No, this was an incident review, scheduled with such cold efficiency that it felt like they had prepared the template days in advance. The agenda was already posted on the wall: conduct review, peer access protocols, updated patrol guidelines. 3 HOA board members sat behind the long cedar desk: Harold Gleason, Mira Tran, and Tomlin Barris. Mireya's empty seat at the head made the whole scene look more honest than it was. Tomlin kept his eyes low, shoulders stiff, already sweating through his collar. Mira tapped her tablet like she was running late for something that mattered. Harold cleared his throat when I walked in and gestured to the chair across from them. I didn't sit. "I want the footage," I said. "Security cam, drone, whatever you have covering the lakeside pier. Now." Harold laced his fingers. "Mr. Rion, I understand you're upset. My daughter was shot. Don't test how upset I am." Mira didn't even flinch. "Unfortunately, the pier is outside the perimeter of our current surveillance grid. That's convenient." "It's a blind spot," she said, as if she were reading off a grocery list. "We've requested additional budget to expand coverage. The board vote is pending." I turned to Tomlin. He was still looking at the table, jaw tight, face pale. "You knew this would happen. You've been nodding through her insanity for months." He didn't respond. Mireya entered the room then, fresh from her display outside. She walked like a politician, slow and composed, as if she hadn't stood over my bleeding daughter an hour ago. She slid into the vacant seat at the head of the table without a word, clicked a pen, and finally looked up. "I assume you're here to lodge a formal concern, Mr. Rion?" "No," I said. "I'm here to notify the board that you're under investigation." Mira blinked. "By whom?" "By the Georgia State Office of Regulatory Oversight. The moment I leave here, your amended patrol protocols, firearm authorization policy, and use of force clauses are going into a folder with evidence tags, including your emails." Harold scoffed. "This isn't a police matter." "It will be." Mireya leaned forward, voice syrupy. "The board passed the patrol updates under Emergency Protocol 17C. We followed procedure. Funny, because 17C only applies to environmental hazards, not security adjustments, and patrol amendments require notarized filings with the state, which I checked for this morning. Nothing's been filed." Mireya's expression barely shifted, but Tomlin flinched. There it was. A crack. I leaned toward him. "Your signature's not on those amendments, is it?" He didn't look at me, but he didn't shake his head either. Mireya closed her folder. "This meeting is over." "No," I said. "It's just beginning." They could shut down a room, but they couldn't shut down what was coming. The chain of custody was already in motion. Ballistics, medical reports, insurance disclosures, and the fact that Mireya Falls had pointed a weapon at a child with no legal protection, no jurisdiction, and no camera coverage, that wouldn't disappear behind HOA boilerplate. Outside, I heard the soft clatter of heels approaching. A resident peeked in. Elora Kane, the woman from 7B. She froze when she saw Mireya, then disappeared. The witnesses were watching now, and the board knew it. I walked out without another word, but I wasn't done, not even close. I found Tomlin Barris sitting alone on the stone bench near the community koi pond, the one they built to give residents a calming space to reflect. His tie was loosened, blazer folded beside him, and his left hand kept rubbing the side of his temple like he was trying to erase something. He didn't notice me at first. His eyes were fixed on the surface of the water, where orange fish broke ripples like slow, circling truths. "You gonna tell me what you signed?" I asked. He stiffened but didn't turn. "There's nothing to tell." I sat down beside him, leaving just enough distance to make the choice his. "She's lying about the protocol amendment. She needed at least 3 board signatures. And unless Mira Tran has a clone, she's out of the country until next week." His jaw tightened. "You shouldn't know that. I shouldn't be the father of a child with a gunshot wound either. But here we are." He finally looked at me. Up close, Tomlin looked older than I remembered, gray hairs where black used to be, and a weariness that didn't come from long hours. It came from decisions, ones he clearly regretted. She told us it was a deterrent, he muttered. Said it was just visibility, vests, radios, flashlights. She said that, I echoed. And you believed her? She said the legal review came back clean. She said she had municipal consultation. We're just volunteers, Garrick. None of us are lawyers. Then you should have voted no. I didn't vote at all, he said, voice sharper now. She presented the final version as a done deal. No session, no minutes. She put it in the bylaws update package, printed it with the renewal forms, and called it ratified. That tracked. I'd seen that trick before, slipping policy beneath paper most people never read. Then you have a choice, I said. You can be the guy who got manipulated, or the guy who watched it happen and did nothing. Tomlin exhaled through his nose, staring at the water again. She said the insurance covered it. She said we had liability waivers built into the new member agreements. She said a lot of things, but the coverage is null the second a firearm gets introduced on common grounds. I checked the policy myself. She told us she cleared it with the agent. And I used to write audit reports on that agency. I guarantee they didn't clear it. I already emailed their compliance division. You're one verified signature away from being on the hook for criminal negligence. He looked genuinely sick now. You think they'll come after me? Depends. Did you approve the equipment purchase reimbursements? No, she paid for them herself. Said it wasn't worth dragging the board through another budget session. Just said she'd donate it. My chest tightened. Mireya knew exactly what she was doing. If it wasn't processed through HOA finances, there'd be no audit trail, no paper trigger for the insurance carrier to flag. Then that pier incident isn't just unauthorized, I said. It's completely uninsured. The moment Celine's medical file hits review, you'll have investigators asking questions. They'll find the gap, the missing vote, the lack of filing, and then they'll ask why you stayed silent. He rubbed his forehead harder. She said she was protecting the neighborhood. She shot a child. The words dropped between us like stone. The koi stirred. Tomlin lowered his hand. If I talk, I lose everything. The board will turn on me. I'll get sued. She'll say I knew and said nothing. If you talk, I said, you might get subpoenaed, sure. But you'll also be protected as a cooperating witness. You stay silent, and you'll be a co-defendant when this goes public. He nodded slowly, not in agreement, but in resignation, like a man who already knew the path he'd have to take and was just working up the courage to walk it. I saw her reach for the weapon, he said softly, almost to himself. I saw it. I was standing on the other end of the pavilion, and I froze. I didn't push, not yet. That girl was just painting, he added. And Mireya, she didn't even blink. There it was, his shame, raw and unfiltered. You don't have to carry that forever, I said. But if you want to put it down, you know what you need to do. He didn't reply, but he didn't walk away either. 3 days after the shooting, the patrols got vests, bright yellow, reflective, with Orland Pines safety monitor printed in block letters across the back. They came in plastic bins stacked outside the HOA office, handed out like party favors. Mireya Falls stood beside them, clipboard in hand, ticking off names like a general preparing for combat. They weren't guards, they were neighbors, retired dentists, weekend cyclists, real estate agents. But now, under Mireya's watch, they patrolled the walking trails with radios clipped to their belts and laminated protocol cards swinging from their necks. Celine was still home, her leg bandaged, her movement limited, her voice smaller than it had ever been. She hadn't picked up a pencil since the hospital. The pier was closed, pending safety improvements. And the HOA had the gall to cite me for improper confrontation with HOA personnel after my meeting with the board. I stood in the shadow of our front door, arms crossed, watching the newest patrol unit march past the corner garden. A woman in yoga pants nodded as she walked by. Her hand hovered a little too close to her holster-shaped hip pouch. Across the street, a boy no older than 9 got flagged for unsupervised activity. He'd been bouncing a ball on the sidewalk. A patrol member wrote something down. I shut the door. Inside, the house was too quiet. Celine was in her room. I didn't want to check again. Every time I opened the door, she smiled like she wasn't hurting. And that hurt more than the blood had. My phone buzzed. A neighborhood alert. All residents are advised to review the updated common area conduct policy. Enforcement will be active between 0700 2200. Complaints may result in community demerits. Demerits. They were building a point system now. It was control. Pure, systematic, quiet control. And Maria was building it fast. Faster than a state agency could respond. I'd filed the complaints. I'd submitted the preliminary report, but oversight didn't move in hours or even days. It would take weeks, maybe longer. In that time, Mireya would tighten her grip. I needed to move faster. That evening, I walked the outer ring path, technically common ground, but still lined with older oak trees that hadn't been trimmed into sterile perfection. The patrols didn't bother with this route yet. Near the north maintenance shed, I saw something that stopped me cold. Two teens, kids I recognized from the back cul-de-sac, were pressed against the fence while an older man in a vest barked at them over a walkie. They weren't running. They weren't vandalizing. One of them had dropped a baseball glove. I stepped out from behind the hedge. "Problem here?" I asked, voice low. The man turned. "Private patrol activity, sir. Best you move along." I flashed my badge, not police issue anymore, but still active clearance through the city's interagency intel unit. "I'm not a sir," I said. "I'm Garrick Rion, and unless those kids just committed a felony with a leather mitt, you're detaining minors without cause." He stiffened. The boys looked at me like I was wearing a cape. "I didn't touch them," the man muttered. "But you used a radio to issue a compliance stop," I said. "You addressed them as suspicious. And you're not a licensed guard." He swallowed hard. "I was just following community safety protocols." "Then you better hope those protocols come with a lawyer." He backed off. I waved the kids toward the street. They bolted, and I snapped a photo of his badge number as he walked away. Back home, I pulled out the HOA manual, Revised Code of Conduct, April edition. The spine cracked like it had never been opened. Page 42, Patrol Authority. The language was vague, flexible, dangerously so. It referred to engagement authority as contextual discretion, no limits, no jurisdiction clarification, no approval stamps, and most importantly, no signatures. It wasn't law, it wasn't even policy. It was a pamphlet masquerading as power, and Mireya had wrapped the whole community in it like a noose. I closed the book. Then I opened a new file on my laptop and named it Operation Pier Collapse. It started with a hunch. The HOA claimed the patrol amendment was passed under Emergency Clause 17C, but I knew that clause by heart. It only covered environmental hazards, mold, erosion, storm aftermath, not policy changes, and certainly not authorization for armed civilian patrols. But Mireya banked on no one checking the clause against the HOA's filing history. She relied on speed, on noise, on throwing so many new rules at us that no one had time to dig. Except I had time now. While Celine slept, I opened a private terminal at the county library, not my home computer, not anything traceable. This one required a PIN to access government portals. My old credentials still gave me ghost access to the public-private registry. Most HOA boards didn't even know was indexed. I typed in Orlean Pines Reserve. The screen loaded slow. The index was outdated, full of duplicates and broken links. But I wasn't looking for approval. I was looking for gaps. I scrolled through the filings. March, budget approval. April, meeting minutes. April 14th. Patrol protocol filing, filed by M. Falls. No secondary signatories. No recorded vote. No timestamp of board consensus. No scanned signatures at all. I leaned closer. She'd uploaded a draft protocol sheet and renamed it as final. It wasn't even the proper format. No initials in the margin. No ratification ID from the city's oversight registry. She filed it like it was law, but it was just a PDF. A PDF she typed up on her home computer and uploaded through the HOA portal on a Saturday, which meant, legally, it never happened. I downloaded the metadata, timestamp, file hash, IP trail, masked through a VPN, but still originating from a device not registered to the HOA office. Then I cross-referenced it with the original charter of Orlean Pines, scanned from paper, archived by the state during development approval 15 years ago. There it was, buried in Appendix B, a clause that read, "No amendment to HOA authority over enforcement or patrol shall be valid without a notarized majority vote accompanied by filing with the Municipal Oversight Registrar and public posting on community platforms for a period of 15 business days. 15 days. No notice had ever gone out. No board email, no bulletin, no signage. Mireya never waited. She faked the rule, printed the pamphlet, and armed herself under its lie. That wasn't just a violation. That was fraudulent enforcement. And in Georgia, enforcement under false legal authority, especially involving firearms, wasn't a civil matter. It was criminal. I leaned back in the chair, heart slow, steady. She'd built the entire patrol system on a rule that legally didn't exist, and all I needed now was the insurance file to tighten the noose. Because if the policy was updated based on her amendment, then the board committed fraud by omission, insuring under false authority. If it wasn't updated, then they were completely uninsured. Either way, the liability was nuclear. My phone buzzed once, an encrypted reply from the oversight email I'd sent 2 days earlier. Your report has been acknowledged and assigned for preliminary review. Due to volume, active investigation may take up to 10 business days. If you possess proof of immediate physical risk, submit to emergency compliance queue. I clicked submit without blinking and attached the metadata dump. Then I called Officer Lynette. She answered with tired sarcasm. Don't tell me someone else pulled a gun on your kid. No, I said, but I've got a false policy amendment, an unratified weapons protocol, and a child's blood on a pier with no coverage. That snapped her attention. I need the projectile, I said. Recovered from the ER wound extraction, chain of custody is clean, yes? It's locked in evidence, tagged to the Celine Rion file. ER doc handed it off with full report. Why? Because I'm going to prove it wasn't a warning shot. It was aimed, and when I do, I want the state to see it came from a patrol that doesn't legally exist. You're really going after her? No, I said. I'm going after every board that thinks they can build a militia out of lawn complaints and paranoia. She was quiet for a moment. Then, you'll have your report by Friday. I hung up. In the span of one afternoon, Mireya's fake authority had gone from printed pamphlet to ticking time bomb, and she had no idea it was already live. Celine woke up crying for the first time since the shooting, not from pain. Her wound was healing, the stitches holding, but from a dream. She wouldn't say what it was about, just that she didn't want to close her eyes again. I sat on the floor beside her bed until the sun came up. Her fingers wrapped tight around mine, like the darkness might take her back if she let go. I hadn't slept in 2 days. That morning, I brewed coffee that tasted like metal and rage. The house was too still, the air too clean. I hated how quiet it was, like nothing had happened. But everything had. When I opened the front door to get the mail, I saw another patrol walking by, this time a middle-aged couple with walkie-talkies and clipboards. No gun that I could see, but I didn't doubt Mireya had encouraged some of them to carry off record. They didn't meet my eyes, just nodded stiffly and moved on. In the mailbox, buried beneath a landscaping reminder and a coupon book, was a folded letter with my name typed in block letters. HOA header, internal seal, Mireya's signature at the bottom. Due to your conduct and unauthorized access of HOA systems, this letter serves as formal warning. Should your behavior persist, board review may result in suspension of resident privileges, including access to common areas and HOA-sponsored services. They were trying to ban me. I laughed, not loud, just that dead, hollow laugh that lives behind your teeth when something stops being surprising. Inside, I tossed the letter on the table and opened my laptop. Lynette's report had landed. Ballistic analysis. Round entry at 43-degree descending angle. Distance 12.4 ft. Conclusion. Unlikely to be a ricochet. Most probable trajectory indicates intentional discharge towards subject, not ground. There it was. The nail. I uploaded the file into the encrypted drive with the metadata and policy violations. Then I took the hard copy and walked out the front door. I wasn't going to wait anymore. Tomlin wasn't at the HOA office, which didn't surprise me. After our conversation, he'd probably buried himself somewhere quiet, still deciding if he wanted to grow a spine before the subpoenas arrived. But I didn't need him yet. Instead, I walked to the edge of the main pavilion, where Mireya liked to take her meetings. She was already there, of course. A sun hat, a clipboard, a coffee, and 2 men in matching vests stood just behind her like flanking statues. She smiled as I approached. Mr. Rion, lovely morning. I have something for you, I said, pulling the folder from my bag. She didn't reach for it, just raised an eyebrow. Another complaint? No. Evidence? Of? Fraud? And use of force under a policy that doesn't legally exist. The smile didn't fade, but her posture shifted, just slightly, shoulders stiffer, chin straighter. I'll have legal review it. No need, I said. It's already been submitted to the state, and the insurance carrier, and the Regulatory Oversight Office. This is just a courtesy copy. Behind her, one of the vest guys shifted. She opened the folder slowly, skimmed the top sheet, then looked up with that same politician calm. You're not on the board, Mr. Rion. No, I said, but I'm the father of the girl you shot, and I know how to trace liability to its weakest link. She closed the folder. This conversation is over. No, Mireya. This reign is over. I turned and walked away before she could respond. By the time I got home, my phone was already lighting up. An automated ping from the state portal. Case escalation approved. Compliance investigation initiated. Notification to be delivered to relevant parties within 72 hours. It was moving. Not fast, but enough. 3 days. That's how long Mireya had to spin her web before outside hands tore it apart. But she didn't know I had another thread. I walked past Killeen's door and heard music playing. Soft. The kind she used to paint to. Her voice followed. Low, whispered, but clear. Dad, do you think I'll ever go back to the pier? I stopped, swallowed. Yeah, I said, but not while they're the ones guarding it. Tomlin showed up at my door at 6 a.m. No text, no call. Just 3 slow knocks, the kind you make when you're not sure you want the door to open. He looked like hell. Collar crooked, skin pale. He clutched a manila envelope to his chest like it was the only thing keeping his ribs from caving in. I didn't know where else to go, he said. I stepped aside without a word. The sun hadn't even cleared the rooftops yet. Celine was still asleep upstairs. I made coffee, though neither of us touched it. He sat at the table, staring at the envelope, like if he opened it, everything inside might crawl out and bite him. She's going to bury me, he said finally. If this goes public, you're not the one who pulled the trigger. No, he said, voice flat. But I let her, and I let her fake it all. And now people are scared, Garrick. They whisper to me at night, ask if I've seen the patrol logs, if they're being watched. They think I have answers. I leaned forward. Do you? He pushed the envelope across the table. I opened it slowly. Inside were printed emails. Time-stamped internal chain. One was from Mireya, dated 4 weeks before the shooting. If we wait for a board vote, we lose the momentum. Emergency powers allow for implementation first, ratification later. By then, people will see it works. Another, 2 days later. No need to panic the residents with fine print. We just post the protocol and let them assume it's already law. Don't complicate it. Then a third marked urgent. If Rion pushes back, frame it as aggression. The board must stay above personal disputes. This isn't about his daughter. It's about control. I exhaled slowly. These weren't just procedural manipulations. This was premeditated. She told us it was temporary, Tomlin whispered. Said it was just until the vandalism stopped. Said it would be good for insurance optics. She lied, I said, and she used you to prop it up. He nodded, hollow. I know. I tapped the last page. This proves malicious policy enforcement. He hesitated. There's a second copy, he said. On the HOA server. She's probably already wiping it. Too late, I said. The state's already pulling digital archives. His eyes widened. You're serious? I filed before I even confronted her. He swallowed hard. Then I'm already implicated. Not if you cooperate. I am cooperating. Not to me, I said. To the investigation, officially. You make a statement, attach this envelope, and submit before the audit hits. You'll be on record as a whistleblower, protected. I'll lose the board seat. You'll keep your name. He nodded slowly, like he wasn't entirely sure which one mattered more. Before he could second-guess himself, I took out my scanner and uploaded every page, made 2 copies, one for the state, one for insurance. I handed the originals back. You keep these, I said, in case she turns on you. He clutched the envelope like it had grown heavier in the last hour. I'm sorry about Celine, he said quietly. I should have stopped it sooner. You're stopping it now. He stood, paused, then looked toward the stairs. She's strong. She'll get through this. She shouldn't have to. He nodded again, then left without another word. I sat in the silence he left behind. Outside, I could hear the faint crackle of radios, another patrol circuit starting their morning loop. They had no idea the ground was about to shift, under their feet. I opened the state reporting portal and attached Tomlin's files to the ongoing case number, flagged it for preemptive review, labeled it Internal Board Whistleblower Evidence. Then I hit submit. It was no longer just my word against Mireya's. Now the board's treasurer was turning the screws from the inside. The first ripple hit 24 hours later. A plain white envelope arrived, addressed to Mireya Falls, but misdelivered to my box. HOA seal, state compliance watermark, faint in the corner. I didn't open it, didn't need to. I'd seen enough of those during my years in internal affairs to know what it was. A formal pre-audit notification, which meant the state had already moved. I walked it over to the HOA office myself. The blinds were closed, the front door locked even during posted hours. But someone was inside. I could hear paper shuffling, voices low and tense. I slid the envelope through the mail slot and walked away without knocking. The real work was already happening behind the scenes. That night, I opened the folder I'd labeled Char 17A, Collapse Package. Inside were 3 distinct files. 1. The amendment discrepancy, Tomlin's signed email chain, and the metadata from the Patrol Protocol PDF Mireya had filed without board approval. This formed the foundation. False authority, no vote, improper procedure. 2. The ballistics report officer Lanette's forensic breakdown of the bullet angle, confirming deliberate aim and disproving the warning shot claim. The wound itself became the evidence. 3. Insurance breach package screenshots of the HOA policy, clearly excluding firearm-related incidents from coverage unless sanctioned by a municipality. Paired with the forged patrol clause, it created an airtight liability gap. I uploaded all 3 to the compliance case file, appended with the newest update, Tomlin's witness file. Then I did what most people in HOA hell never do. I pulled the trigger on the civilian media alert. Not a press release, not a viral TikTok. Just a quiet submission to the local newspaper's investigations desk with the subject line, Unauthorized HOA weapons protocol leads to child shooting. No oversight, no insurance, no accountability. Attached, anonymized versions of the files. I wasn't trying to light a fire. I was aiming to boil the water slow. By morning, I had 3 emails in my inbox, 1 from a reporter, 1 from the oversight office, and 1 from an HOA board member I hadn't heard from before. Subject: You don't know me, but I'm done being quiet. Her name was Colleen Haar, technically a non-voting advisory member, according to HOA records. She didn't attend most meetings, but she'd apparently been CC'd on every internal memo Mireya ever sent. Her message was short. I have copies. I know what she buried. Tell me where to send them. I gave her a burner inbox. Then I packed a bag. Celine was stable, and a nurse, friend was coming by to keep an eye on her. I needed to be somewhere else for the day, somewhere that didn't smell like dried antiseptic and silent tension. I drove 2 hours to the municipal records office where Orland Pines had first filed their incorporation. In person. Digital records could be rewritten, uploaded, scrubbed. But the stamped master files, those were permanent. I requested the original filing packet, waited 40 minutes, signed my name 5 times. Then the clerk returned with a thick binder of photocopied forms. I flipped straight to the page I needed. Appendix B, the enforcement clause. Same as before. No amendments since 2009. No adjustments to patrol jurisdiction. No emergency provision override authority. I had them. That night, back home, I uploaded high-res scans and sent them straight to the oversight lead assigned to the case. Compare this with Mireya's April filing. Full contradiction, no legal override. Then I locked everything behind a triple encrypted firewall and made a separate copy on an air-gapped USB. Not for the state, for the lawyer I'd already contacted in case this thing turned criminal. Because if Mireya so much as twitched in the wrong direction, if she tried to bury me the way she buried the truth, I wasn't going to need to prove anything. I was going to bury her with her own paper trail. The next phase wasn't about rage. It was about pressure. Pressure in the right places, applied at the right time, and slow enough that the target didn't realize they were breaking until it was too late. I started with the residents, not by rallying them, not yet, but by seeding information. Quietly, deliberately. I slid flyers under doors, black and white, anonymous, nothing flashy. Just a headline. Your insurance won't cover you. Ask the HOA why. Below it, a line from the coverage clause and a redacted scan of Maria's unauthorized amendment. No opinions, no accusations, just the facts, the kind that Chewett trust. By noon, they were being passed around like wildfire. At the mailbox clusters, the dog park. One neighbor taped it to the inside of her SUV window. I didn't wait to see what Maria would do. I went straight to Tomlin's garage. It was his idea to meet there, neutral ground, as he put it. Away from both our homes and out of the HOA's line of sight. He'd cleared out the lawn tools and parked his car on the street to give us space. When I stepped inside, 2 other people were already there. Colleen Harr, short and sharp-eyed, stood beside a fold-out table. Beside her sat Mrs. Elora Kane, the woman from 7B who saw the shooting from her balcony and hadn't said a word since. Until now. Colleen nodded at me. She's ready. Elora didn't look up. She kept her hands folded on her lap, fingers trembling. Her voice cracked, but it came out clear. I saw her aim the gun. I saw it before she said anything. The girl wasn't even looking at her. I pulled out a small recorder, set it on the table, and let it run. Elora gave a full statement. Time, distance, observation point, Maria's stance, the pause between her shout and the shot, the lack of any visible threat. I used to teach middle school, she said at the end. I know what fear looks like, and I know what power abuse smells like. I turned the recorder off. Colleen stepped forward next. She handed me a slim black flash drive. Archived emails, she thought she deleted them. Did you work IT? No, I just never delete anything. I plugged it into my laptop right there in the garage. Folders loaded, internal board emails, unsent drafts. Memos titled things like nuisance deterrent strategy and liability evasion proposal, and a few that were worse. One, dated the night after the shooting, will hold a sympathy vigil, painted as a mental health crisis, frame her as unstable but misunderstood, push the narrative before he does. She was already preparing to spin Celine as the problem, I said quietly. Tomlin stared at the floor. Colleen looked like she wanted to break something. Use it, she said. Burn her with it. I nodded once. Then I showed them the last piece of the trap, the audit letter. Maria's copy had been delivered. She'd signed for it. That meant the 3-day countdown had begun. I was already finalizing the compliance packet, over 100 pages now, perfectly ordered, tabbed, and time-stamped. The media had it too. They were just waiting for confirmation before they ran the story. But I wanted Maria to feel it first. So, I made my last move. I walked to the old community center, where she held her monthly leadership chats, and posted a single sheet on the bulletin board. A board that fakes power deserves none. Audit begins in 48 hours. Know your rights. It didn't have my name. It didn't need it. By the time I turned to leave, 2 residents were already reading it. One of them pulled out his phone and took a picture. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept. Not long, but deep. Because the trap was set. The board was splintering. The residents were whispering. And Maria Falls had no idea that every defense she'd built was already gone. By the time the audit letter was officially posted on the Orlean Pines bulletin board, Maria had already shifted tactics. She wasn't smiling anymore. Not at me, not at anyone. The crisp confidence she used to wear like a badge had morphed into something colder. Tight lips, short answers, guarded eyes. Her patrols still circled the community, but the swagger was gone. They moved slower now, unsure. One even stopped to read the bulletin before pretending not to. The document was plain. State letterhead. No threats, no drama. Just a line at the top that changed everything. Per complaint, 187-05C, the Office of Regulatory Oversight has initiated formal compliance review of Orlean Pines HOA board operations. 3. Sentences in, it mentioned the unauthorized patrol policy. 4 sentences later, it cited the potential for temporary suspension of HOA board authority pending findings. That phrase alone cracked the dam. Residents started whispering in broad daylight. Someone yanked the rulebook pamphlets off the rec center corkboard. Another walked their dog right across a no-pet zone with a grin that looked more like defiance. But Mireya didn't flinch. She doubled down. That evening, she called an emergency community safety session at the HOA center. The notice went out with red headers and bold font, like the fire was coming from outside, not inside her office. I showed up early. The room was already half full when I arrived, mostly retirees, a few young couples, and a few of the newer residents who still looked like they were trying to figure out which side to stand on. I took a seat in the back, not to hide, but to watch. Mireya entered from the side door exactly on time. No uniform this time, just a blazer and a pearl pin. Professional, controlled, still pretending she had nothing to answer for. She stood behind the podium and smiled thinly. "Thank you all for coming. There's been confusion," she began, "and it's important we address it before outside interference undermines our shared vision of safety." Confusion. Interference. She wasn't just spinning, she was rewriting the very language of what she'd done. "As many of you have heard, a resident has filed a complaint with the state," she continued. "They allege misconduct based on policies your board voted on in good faith. This is not the first time someone has misunderstood the balance between structure and liberty." I stood. The room shifted, quiet but undeniable. Every eye turned. "I have a copy of the patrol amendment," I said calmly. "No board vote, no second signatory, no municipal filing. You submitted it on a Saturday morning from your home IP address." Mireya didn't move, didn't blink. "And we have the forensic analysis," I added. "Trajectory confirms the shot wasn't a warning, it was deliberate. Celine was struck in a straight angle while seated. Multiple witnesses, multiple data points. Your own board is testifying." Still no reaction, but something flickered behind her eyes. Just for a second. "Mr. Rion, this is not the forum. This is the forum. Because this is where she declared authority she didn't have. This is where she told you armed patrols were legal. This is where she handed you pamphlets with policies that voided your insurance. And this is where she's been lying to your faces for months." I turned slowly, letting the words settle. "In 48 hours, the state will begin a compliance audit, but this community doesn't need to wait to act. You can call a vote now, today. Remove the board, strip the title, reset the system before it burns down with you in it." A murmur broke out, small at first, then louder. Someone clapped once, then again. And just like that, it spread, like breath catching in dry brush. Mireya opened her mouth to speak, but the noise rolled over her. I walked toward the exit, letting the crowd make its choice. Behind me, voices rose. Someone shouted, "Vote now!" Another called, "How do we remove her?" I didn't turn back, because I knew what a house looked like when the foundation cracked. And this one? It had just begun to fall. The boardroom had never been this full. Not during budget meetings, not during election season, not even when the pool was closed early last summer and a dozen residents nearly rioted over lost lap time. Now, there weren't enough chairs. People lined the walls, spilling into the hallway. The glass door stayed propped open for airflow, but it didn't stop the buzz. Whispers, phones recording, neighbors murmuring names and dates and phrases like, "She really did it," and "We never signed for that." At the front, Mireya Falls sat rigid in her chair. The long oak table in front of her usually gave her distance. Authority, now it looked like a barrier, or a cage. The rest of the board flanked her, but the symmetry was broken. Tomlin sat 2 seats down, hands folded, a thick file folder in front of him. Colleen Haar stood off to the side, arms crossed, eyes on the audience. Mira Tran, back from vacation, looked like she'd been dropped into the middle of a forest fire and handed a spray bottle. At exactly 6 p.m., the state compliance officer stepped forward. Her name was Alyssa Hart. Gray suit, clipboard, unflinching tone. She didn't introduce herself with a smile. She just looked up, nodded once, and began reading. "This board has been issued an emergency compliance review order under the Georgia Private Governance Oversight Act. As of this moment, All board actions, enforcements, or penalties are suspended pending investigative findings. The room went still. Mireya didn't react, but her hands clenched tighter. Alyssa continued. The review is based on the following allegations: falsification of board policy, unauthorized implementation of civilian patrol, endangerment of minors, and fraudulent use of HOA authority under misrepresented amendments. Then she looked up. Residents have requested the right to speak. This is granted. And then I stepped forward. I didn't need a podium. I didn't bring notes. I brought one sheet, the scanned HOA charter page with the patrol amendment clause, and held it up so every camera in the room could see it. This is the original enforcement clause from Orland Pines Reserve's founding charter, I said. It hasn't changed since 2009. It clearly states that any patrol authority must be approved by a notarized majority vote and registered with the municipal office. I held up the next paper. This is the amendment Mireya Falls filed in April. No vote, no co-signatures, no registration, just a document uploaded from her home IP address and treated like law. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. She used that fake policy to build a patrol system, armed, untrained, unauthorized. One of those patrols pulled a weapon on my 13-year-old daughter and fired. I turned, locking eyes with Mireya. She says it was a warning shot. The ballistic report says otherwise. Entry angle confirms she aimed to hit. Now the room stirred. Phones lit up. The tension shifted like wind through dry grass. I looked to the crowd. But this isn't just about me or my daughter. This is about every resident who paid dues thinking you were buying peace, and instead, you bought silence, fear, and surveillance. I stepped back. Elora Kane was next. She stood slowly, body stiff with age, but voice unwavering. I saw the whole thing. The girl was drawing. Mireya approached without speaking. She aimed, she fired, no warning, just that sound, and then screaming. She didn't cry, she didn't stammer, she just told the truth. Tomlin stood last. He opened the file. I enabled her, he said. I didn't sign the amendment, but I didn't stop her either. I saw the first patrol vests arrive, and I told myself it wasn't my place. That's on me. He slid the folder to Alyssa. These are the original emails, the threats, the deception, the financial cover-up, everything. Mireya rose. Her voice was hoarse. You people are overreacting. I acted in good faith. Sit down, Ms. Falls, Alyssa said. This board is now under temporary administrative control. You will be removed from office pending the outcome of formal review. You may submit a response in writing. A murmur of relief swept through the room. Some clapped, others just exhaled. Mireya didn't sit. She stared at me. Just stared. And then she turned and walked out, pushing past cameras and whispered curses. For the first time in months, the boardroom felt like a room again, not a fortress. It was almost quiet. Almost. I found her at the pier again. Celine sat cross-legged on the edge, sketchbook resting on her lap, the paper catching the last streaks of late afternoon light. Her hoodie was zipped to the chin, and the breeze ruffled her hair like it had before everything fractured. She didn't turn when I stepped onto the dock, just kept drawing. I stood behind her, hands in my jacket pockets, watching as her pencil moved, slow and careful, but steady. Not like before, when her lines danced wild across the page. This time, it was controlled, intentional. She was drawing the boardroom, or at least her version of it. The table bent like a crooked spine, people with hollow faces, one chair upside down, one on fire. I thought you'd never come back here, I said softly. She shrugged. They don't own the lake. No, I said. Not anymore. The compliance team had officially suspended the entire HOA board for a minimum of 90 days. New elections were coming. The patrol program was void. All fines and citations issued under the unauthorized protocol were wiped clean. The insurance company had launched a parallel investigation, and there was talk of civil suits already circling. Mireya Falls had gone quiet. Her house lights stayed off most nights. Her car hadn't moved. Some said she fled. Others said she was hiding, waiting for the fallout to settle. But I didn't care anymore. The system had worked, not fast, not clean, but enough. Colleen had already started organizing a residents' vote for a community oversight council, one that wouldn't answer to hidden amendments and invented codes. Tomlin resigned publicly, not out of guilt, but to make room for something better, something earned. I sat beside Celine. The wood was warm beneath us, sun-soaked and old. She passed me the sketch pad. "It's not done," she said. I studied the lines, saw the detail she'd etched into the flames, the empty seat in the middle, the little figure standing beside it. "It doesn't have to be," I said. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. We sat like that for a long time. I thought about everything it took to get here, the evidence, the silence, the people who cracked